the whole scene where he first kisses the mage is like he's screaming at her like, "You're kind. I don't like you guys." Then all of a sudden they're making out. I'm like, he is a guy, but like
but also your best friend just died. Like take a beat, dude.
Hey, you've never told me that you haven't had a baddie right next to you when your friend died. Like sometimes it just writes itself. It's poetry.
Oh my goodness.
Dragon claw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am your host. I am very excited for today because today, not only are we discussing a very interesting film, but we have some brand new faces here on the podcast. Please allow me to introduce you all to both Kade and Brookelin Backus from the incredible podcast Knocked Prone. What started as a passion project in 2020, born from Kade's love of D&D and his drive to create a truly professional grade show, since grown into something bigger. Over the past 6 years, they've built together not just one, but two amazing podcasts, including a full real roleplay trilogy and We're More Than D&D Characters, a show that dives deep into the people behind the dice. Kade, Brookelin, thank you so much for coming on.
That was awesome. I mean, honestly, I'm flattered to be here.
Yes,
we're flattered
for
to be
sure.
here.
Super excited. And it gave us a fantastic reason to watch the infamous 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie, which we had not seen until recently.
But we've yet done a deep dive.
Yeah. Yes. Now we'll forever be connected to this beautiful film.
I am so excited for this because I have so many thoughts. I have so many things, but I want to get to know you guys a little better, but I also want the audience to get to know you guys a little better. In your bio online, it sort of mentioned that you have this love. Like, how did you get involved with D&D? And Brookelin, have you always been involved with D&D, or did Kade lasso you in and just fall in love with it here?
So a little bit of both. We played our first D&D game together. When we were both 20, we played a D&D one-shot together. I ended up falling in love with it immediately, and Brooke was like, it was good. And then I went hard in the paint with, I watched a bunch of D&D podcasts, and I had done some audio engineering in high school for rock bands because I was in rock bands in high school. And then I was like, okay, I have all these microphones and all this equipment. I might as well use it for a podcast. And so then I started a podcast. And then in the peak of 2020, when everything was on lockdown, all my players had quit for the game that we had been streaming. Brooke was like, hey, I know you're really sad about all your players not wanting to play D&D with you anymore. So what if we did like a solo game? And so we played a solo game together that we ended up recording and putting on Patreon. And then after that, Brooke was, I don't want to say hooked, but I had definitely committed her to play.
And then it's been a slow boiling love since then. Yeah. And at that same time, I had convinced Kade that he needed to get a TikTok and an Instagram account. And so then we really heavily started making content together. And that has been what we've done for like 5 years at this point.
Years. That's awesome. I mean, your guys' TikTok and Instagram are both popping. I discovered you guys through Instagram there, and I feel like quite a few people have discovered you through Instagram. And it's really like, I know, shocker, somebody who runs a dragon movie and television podcast. I love seeing D&D content, and really it makes me happy to see people that are willing to just get involved with some sort of passion project that they love. I'm sure, especially with you guys understanding, I try to find ways to get my podcast to promote it. I'll go on Twitter or Blue Sky and just put in the search like podcast recommendations.
Yeah.
And something that I see consistently popping up is people are like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What should I do a podcast about? And I'm like, if you have to ask people what to do a podcast about, you're already setting yourself up for failure because you're just not going to enjoy it. You're not going to love it. And it doesn't even matter if it's something as niche as just D&D or as niche as Dragon Media. There's going to be an audience for it. And there's going to be people that are going to just be willing to cue in. And again, I've brought this point up several times here, but do you guys do 5e, or do you have a specific system play that you prefer?
So I've never played anything that wasn't 5e. I've played other systems, but as far as production, I've only played 5e produced. So our whole podcast was 5e based. Again, I started playing D&D in 2019.
Yeah.
And then we started a podcast in 2020. Relatively short time frame as far as like the D&D backstory. I've always been like a nerd growing up, but I didn't, when we were married, I didn't tell Brooke that I was like that big of a nerd. I told her like, yeah, I play Pokemon every so often, but like, who doesn't?
So you had to come out of the nerd closet.
Yeah. And then I was like, hey, actually, I play D&D, and so do you, on my podcast that I just started.
It's a tale as old as time. Oh, it's yeah. I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, like, I also am just so it's admirable that the both of you are able to do it together, and you both have that. Because I've definitely seen couples where they're like, oh yeah, he goes off and he does his own thing in the back. I don't understand what it is, but the fact that you're able to not only do it together, but you're bonding over it, and clearly both passionate about it, is awesome. And
yeah, it's
just
fun.
Inspiration to the nerd community out here.
Thank you.
But speaking of inspirations to the nerd community, how would you guys feel about me introducing what we're discussing today?
Yes,
please,
let's go for it.
Alrighty. We are going to be covering the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie. Dungeons and Dragons is a 2000 fantasy adventure film directed by Courtney Solomon in his feature director debut, and written by Carl Cartwright and Topper Lennon. Based on the role-playing game with the same name, the plot follows an empress who wishes to get a hold of a mythical rod that will help her fight an evil wizard, and enlists two thieves for help. The film stars Justin Whalen, Marlon Wayans, Thora Birch, Zoe McLaren, Kristen Wilson, Lee Arenberg, Bruce Payne, and Jeremy Irons. The filming took place in the location of Sedlick, Australia. Despite being a box office bomb and a critical failure, a made-for-TV sequel, Wrath of the Dragon God, was released in 2005. It was not a direct continuation of the storyline of the previous film, though Bruce Payne's character, Damodar, made a return. A third film, The Book Vile Darkness, was shot in 2011 and released direct to DVD in the United Kingdom on August 9th of 2012. So clearly great things going on with this.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw what Rotten Tomato score this movie got. 9%.
9%. You know, I'm going to say something controversial. I've seen worse that have gotten higher scores.
That's what I thought too. I was like, for a 9% movie, I thought this was going to be utter trash.
Yeah, I've only heard extremely negative things about the movie. So I think we went in with like the lowest standards. And so after we watched it, it was like, okay. I mean, was it good? No, but still better than we expected, honestly.
I mean, I do have the feeling that, I'm sure that you guys can relate to this on a personal level. D&D fans have a tendency to get overly invested. And if they feel like that you are ruining what they're doing, or taking something that they love and making it your own thing, they immediately brigade it. So I have a feeling that there was a little, like, obviously this was before brigading was a thing, but I'm sure, like, I've gone to comic book shops and played D&D there. I could see how a lot of these people would react if I came in and were like, yeah, let's just make a beholder a guard. Like, that seems like a good idea, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned that. I was like, a beholder of all creatures to be a guard? Like, you're dead.
Yeah.
He's gonna freak out.
Like, I'll go into more detail with it later, but this film really feels more like a fan-made film, or just a film that people like said, oh, Dungeons and Dragons, let's take the general idea and maybe like one or two things, and they made their whole thing of it. I would have almost rather it be not a Dungeons and Dragons movie and just a whole adventure story, and I think it would have done better if they just sort of marketed as the fight for the dragon rod, but that sounds like a porn name, but I don't know. But what's your guys' overall thoughts? That was just sort of my overarching thoughts generally on the film.
What a wonderful medium to have the best villain ever portrayed. Obviously, Damodar did something right if he transcended not only one movie, but to the second one. Nothing else was kept. Damodar was kept.
Now's a good time to acknowledge the lipstick choice that we made approximately 5 minutes before hopping on.
Hey, I think
Damodar fan over here.
It's the most appropriate.
Now, my only regret is that we didn't do it ahead of time, so it couldn't have been part of the cover photo.
Oh, yeah.
The thumbnail.
Hey, the thumbnail will, like, this is just the live stream thumbnail. We'll get some for the...
Okay, we'll make sure to take some good photos.
We'll have a little photo shoot tonight, you know?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'll shave my head. I'll put a worm in my ear, you know?
2. Thank you very much.
You're right.
But to get back to your question, overall thoughts, I agree that the premise of it supposedly being all surrounded by like Dungeons and Dragons was quite weak. I really, even like, okay, it had dragons in it. I guess you kind of sort of check that box. They were kind of a part of the storyline too. But even like the dungeon part, like I feel like there were opportunities to make different scenes they were in be more like a dungeon. Again, they kind of did that.
There was a dungeon, and there was, up until like the last scene, there was a dragon.
Hey, there was like 2 dungeons. There was
That's true. Yeah, I guess the Thieves Guild also, like, not the, what was it? The Thieves, like, maze, I guess.
What is it called? Yeah. They had a name for it. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, pretty weak on the general premise, honestly. And also, I don't know if you'd heard this before. It kind of seemed like you had before you were watching it. But once Kade said that it's like very loosely and poorly based off of like Star Wars storyline, that also kind of tanked my
like the
opinion
Empress
of the storyline, because I'm like, oh yeah,
hard Queen Amidala vibes. The whole time I was like, and this feels
even just the council and like just so many things. I was like, that's disappointing.
Or the sword fight at the end that they were like
literally the sounds
lightning
it was
bolts.
Making.
I was waiting. Yeah.
See, you hear that, chat? I'm not the only one who compares other movies to Star Wars. You can get off my back. Apparently, Aragon is not Star Wars. So, I mean...
Oh, yeah.
I think you'll find less people who will heavily defend this movie, though. You know what I mean? And be like, hey, no, it's not. It's different, you know? You'll find less loyal fans.
I have a feeling... I have a feeling that this movie actually has a cult following. Well, maybe not because of Honor Amongst Thieves. I also just have to say, and again, this podcast really just needs to cool it because Jeremy Irons just gets all the laurels here, but he's phenomenal in this film. Like, if it wasn't for him, I literally would just think, like, did somebody make this on YouTube and just like upload it? But he was giving it his all. Like, he was coming in and he was like, I don't care about this being a stupid film. Like, I'm doing it all.
Well, several of the actors, like, literally, I felt like, obviously, a lot of the actors felt a little either overacted or poorly acted at times. But there was some actors that it was like, oh my gosh, like, they're giving everything they have to this part. Like, this is like serious to them, which is obviously really upsetting to see it, you know, flop, because that would, you know, to put your heart and soul in it for it to be like, yeah, you know.
Well, it's interesting. It's honestly interesting, though, to think about people who go to a casting for a film based off of, you know, a very popular game, and to think like, this is going to be my big break, or what, you know, what an opportunity, when you don't really know like what the end product's going to be. You're going to, like, when you try out, when you audition to be in a film, like, you assume that it's going to be like worthwhile and quality. You don't think that it's going to get a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes when you go into it, you know?
Especially with a big name like, you know, Dungeons and Dragons that's been around for so long.
It's just interesting to think about maybe even what the actors thought they were getting into before. And then I just kind of wonder, like, throughout that process, how much they were like, I don't know about this writing or this storyline or the costumes. Oh man.
Some of the costumes looked horrible, but there were a couple that I'm like, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I think inconsistency is the main rider there, because I agree. Like, I feel like I can't give any more praise than you have, Kade, of Bruce Payne as Domador right now, but he was killing it just as much as Jeremy Irons. I just didn't know his name going into this movie.
Yeah.
But then you see, like, and again, maybe this is me being controversial here, but Justin Whalen, who is Ridley, I feel like he was amazing in some scenes, and I'm like, you are like, it is so obvious that this is like one of the first projects you've ever worked on in other scenes. And like the whole like again, like we'll dive more into when we do it later, but when he's like, the whole scene where he first kisses the mage is like, it's like he's screaming at her like, you're kind, I don't like you guys. Then all of a sudden they're making out. I'm like, well, he is a guy, but like
but also your best friend just died. Like take a beat, dude.
Hey, you've never told me that you haven't had a baddie right next to you when your friend died. Like, sometimes it just writes itself. It's poetry. Well, let's go ahead and just dive into the first chapter so we can talk about the specifics of the film. Chapter 1, the war for power begins. Empress Savina rules Izmir with a golden scepter that controls golden dragons. She wants to grant rights to commoners, but the Council of Mages, led by Profion, opposes her. Profin demands the scepter. The Empress refuses, sparking a power struggle. Both sides seek the Rod of Seviril, a relic that can control red dragons. Teen thieves Ridley and Snails botch a robbery at the magic school and meet the apprentice Marina. Damodar, Profin's enforcer, attacks and steals the map to the Rod, but the trio escape with it instead. Now, first, before we dive in, you guys can see clearly I am not an English major, and pronouncing words has always been a struggle for me, so I apologize there. But
you're so good.
As somebody who loves D&D, it's hilarious that I'm just like, why on earth do I do this to myself? Rod of Sabriel. But anyways, I actually loved it when the fire came out of the castle and like the entire river was on fire. But instead of like people freaking out, it was the most like millennial/Gen Z coded thing where the guys are like, well, those mages are ruining our lives again. We got to go back to work in 6 hours anyways. Like, just not giving a fuck that it's happening.
Yes.
River's on fire. Nothing new. Like, yeah.
Oh,
overall, what parts stood out to you in this beginning portion? Is there anything that, because I mean, I just watched the movie Q, which it was all right, but I felt like this movie was a lot stronger at the start of a movie than that movie, but it also came out nearly 20 years later.
Yeah.
So what sort of points stood out to you in this section?
I did feel like they came out swinging for sure. Like a lot's going on. You're introduced to a lot of characters. Like I wasn't even sure who's the main character. And, you know, like there was a lot of things that it kind of like simmered down a little bit later. So a lot going on. I mean, it had my attention for sure.
Yeah. And Profion definitely establishes himself as like the bad guy, like super early on when he kills the dragon. And like, even though the animation of the dragon was absolutely horrid, I still like watching the gate close over the dragon's neck, my heart like broke, and I was like so sad. Also, it felt like Pokemon Emerald, where the green or like the blue orb happens for Groudon, and they're like, why isn't it working? The blue orb isn't working, and then the green orb isn't working for the dragon. It's like, maybe get the red orb instead of the green one. I don't know.
Hey,
it felt a little like, hey, dude, color theory is important here.
Color theory or just matching.
As Kade, you could probably relate, the simplest of puzzles in D&D world do not translate over well in the Forgotten Realms.
You could probably do that puzzle and stump your players for a little while.
Wait, red is red? But green is red's complementary color. And it's like, no.
What if we try to make purple here?
Red and blue.
No, don't. Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
No, but that first, like, yeah, I think that was the first little bit of violence, or like the dragon like gets stabbed and everything. And every time something like that happened in the movie, I was just a little surprised. I think because
it's PG.
Yes, PG. And so in my mind, and just because it was just kind of corny, even like the costuming, like all the things, I was thinking like pretty, kind of a kid's show was a little bit of my thought. And so some of the violent parts, I was like, oh wow, like they really they really went for that. What I mean, the further you go back, the less a PG rating really means.
Well, no, for sure. I don't know if you guys remember. I was just thinking about this today. Did you guys ever watch the original live action Jungle Book movie that came out years and years ago with like an adult version of Mowgli, and like he gets brought back into society?
Yes.
It's like there's people like getting, because they go back into the jungle and he's like it's like almost Tarzan and Jungle Book combined, and like all these adventures are like dying and getting strangled by snakes and like sand pits and like brutally getting murdered.
Do you know like how old that movie is about?
I'm guessing the 90s.
90s. Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's just interesting, that era and like what things they have and don't have. And so it's not even like it was that much. It was fine. It wasn't just like that disturbing, like whatever. Like we've seen so much worse, right? But still, just for PG, it was just always like a little like clutch your pearls, because it's like, man, that was
when
just
the
like
dragon
violent.
died, I had to call my mom to get parental guidance to watch the rest of the movie.
So this Jungle Book came out in 1994. So I mean, like 6 years before, like still 90s, early 2000s, back when like killing is like, let the kids see it early. They need to learn it. They're not going to learn it by themselves.
Yeah. Actually, and to add on to that a little bit too, I think it's interesting. Like Kate said, we really only know and can fully appreciate 5e, but the things I feel like we've heard about earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think, I mean, at this point, it's a cultural thing as well, and I don't think the film necessarily super like formed this around the way that D&D was actually at the time. But I do hear that, I mean, it was more brutal. There was more deaths, like definitely a little bit more violent, a little more crunchy. Like, so I don't know. Part of what I actually enjoyed about the film was that I feel like I could just feel the essence of like old style D&D in it a little bit, and that like a little like slightly excessive violence was one thing that reminded me of that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm referring to so many different movies rather than the actual movie that we're talking about. But when the dragon died, it really reminded me of, in the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, the Minotaurs holding up the gates, like trying to let everybody escape. I don't know if you guys seen that film or not, but in that, a Minotaur's like trying to hold the gates so all of his comrades can escape. And he gets shot with arrows and all of a sudden just collapses in him, like just impales him down on the ground. And I'm like,
yeah.
That's where they got the idea.
Okay. Yeah, that is just like that. Totally.
But I do just have to ask, because I personally kept going back and forth, but do you guys like Snails as a character?
I thought Snails really upheld the movie for like a long portion, and the death of Snails, I was shocked, because I was like, okay, like he was carrying a lot of, like, he was doing really well on acting portions. He was doing really well on like the comedic pacing of things. He felt like the lovable NPC that you keep with the party. And then when he dies, it almost felt like an understatement. Like, okay, well, he's dead, and he tossed the map, and then they didn't even show them picking up the map when he dies. And I was like, justice for Snail, man.
Yeah.
like why?
Truthfully, I think this, I mean, Kate even said while you're watching, like, Snails was his favorite character, like, I think from the first like 15 minutes of the movie. So I would say, not a filler. And maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves talking about his death. And also, I would like to point out that the barbarian dwarf redhead guy, I don't know who, the dwarf, and I can't think of his name.
I don't know if
that's a filler character.
Did they give him
I don't
a
know
name?
why he existed. I literally was like, what are you doing here? What are you contributing?
Elwood. You guys didn't pick that up?
No.
I looked at Wikipedia.
Because he appeared underneath the no dwarves sign, and then fell into the sewers, and then was immediately part of the party. And I was like, where did you come from?
Guess I'm with
Why
you guys
are you
now.
here? And he's like, I want gold. And then they were like, we don't have gold. And he was like, I guess I'm here anyway.
I will say that this movie is, like, as much as I love Honor Amongst Thieves and see so many of the ties, this story, like, is a more accurate depiction of a group of friends role-playing together, because it's like the dwarf, like, there's always one, I shouldn't say always, but I've been a part of several campaigns where I'm just sitting there like, why are you part of the party? Like, there's literally, like, you hate all of us here, at least you role-play like you hate all of us. You don't really want, like, you're only here for money, but they still come along and are doing that. Are you just bloodthirsty? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And that was actually
the elves that we're traveling with. You're afraid of horses, but you're riding a horse.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't think about
it. But I can appreciate your point, though, that it is that is kind of low-key D&D. But that's the thing, like, if they had committed more to the culture and kind of made it a joke, I'd super appreciate that. You know, but instead it's like, man, what were the writers thinking?
They should have had a character die in the middle of the thing, and then, like, immediate, like, next scene, new character, no explanation. Like, that I would have been like, yeah. Well, his name, he's not snails, he's slugs.
I was noticing, though, the elf girl that Snails was really into, she sort of, like, immediately took his place, though. Like, when they started going to that dungeon at the end, she was now just coming along. Like, was there a conversation I mixed?
That's a good point. I didn't even think of it.
Yeah,
I think
the tracker lady.
I didn't even think about it at that point because so much had gone on. I feel like I had grasped the general culture of the movie at that point. But yeah, no conversation. And I almost was under the impression that she maybe didn't get along with, like, anybody there. You know, like, she was that kind of elusive type of, like, I work alone.
But she was working for the Empress.
Yes, but to your point, like, it could have at least been a conversation, like a scene.
Yeah, there were so many scenes that it was like hard jump to a next scene that they didn't explain anything prior. Like, there was a whole chain of events that led between one scene to another scene, and then they don't discuss it, and then they just keep going. And it was like, all right, cool.
No,
but I guess I'm glad, because it was an hour and 50 minutes, and it could have been 3 hours.
Yes.
So,
like, I was watching this primarily when I was editing my other podcast last night. So I was just sitting there like, if this was any longer, I would have. Although I'd love to see more of Jeremy Irons just killing it on. He was really in his element there. I also do want to point out, and I didn't even do this on purpose, but I'm just noticing, looking at the 3 chapters, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, Marina the Mage had like 3 completely different, like outfit / makeup, like hairstyle, like the whole shebang, where I'm like, is this the same actress at this point? Like, at the very beginning, she has her hair like up in a bun, she has the glasses, and then later she's like more in like the gown, and then her hair slightly down with, I think it was curls, but I'm not sure. And at the very end, she's like in outdoor leathers, like hair just almost like poofy. I'm like, who is this?
Yes. Yeah. The initial jump from the slick back hair to it being down, like, right there at the beginning. I'm notoriously bad at keeping track of characters and knowing names and what's going on and everything. But yeah, I was like, is that the same person? I had to think about that for a while, honestly.
I feel like they did the no slicked back hair for the sake of, like, and now potential love interest. Like, they're like,
now she's hot.
We'll just slide that in there.
Right? Because you can't fall in love with the librarian. That's just
the
rules.
Duh.
She'll shush you.
Yes. Is there anything else that we want to cover in this first chapter before diving into the next chapter, guys?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Chapter 2, The Quest for the Rod. The group teams up with a dwarf, Elwood, learning that they need the Eye of the Dragon, a ruby key to enter the Rod's tomb. Ridley retrieves the eye from a deadly Thieves Guild maze in Antis. Domodar ambushes them, capturing Marina and stealing the map. The rest escape, but are caught by elf paladin Norda working with Savina. They ally, rescue Marina, reclaim the map, but Snail dies in the fight. They finally secure the Rod of Serville after exploring the dungeon. This is probably my favorite part of the entire movie. Not that they did a horrible job in the climatic final chapter, but there was just too much going on where I was like, wait, how is this going on? What is going on? Well, all of this seems pretty straightforward and almost like Indiana Jones-esque.
Yeah, and when you get the most, I think, traditional elements, like they're really in the swing of things at this point. You know, there's no setup and there's no trying to wrap everything up at the very end. And so I do think it was the most entertaining to watch. And yeah, and the Thieves Guild part was so funny to me because I think it's one of the more entertaining parts because it's that classic dungeon setup and it's all the booby traps and it's like the just dodging things and everyone cheering. Like it's a fun scene. And I also just think it's so funny how heavy that plot armor feels because they're like, oh yeah, like nobody makes it out of this. Like nobody. Like everyone dies. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, you got this. You're going to do it. And then he does. And he like hardly breaks a sweat.
Yeah.
But that felt like the most like AD&D, because like classic D&D, you know, is like everyone has a 10-foot pole. And if you don't have a 10-foot pole, you're probably going to die immediately to a trap. Because that was how like previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons were. Like there was traps that were meant to outkill you or like just outright kill your character. And so like he in every single room had like, oh, I'm just going to touch the eyeball and it sets it on fire. Okay, cool. And like, you know, just a little bit of like, I felt that with the, like they paid homage to the previous editions.
Actually, that's a good point because I feel like nowadays in D&D, if you walk somewhere where there's traps, you're probably going to get hit at some point. I feel like there's more of the vibe of like you're going to learn and that's how you're going to figure out the puzzle.
Roll me a dex check.
And you're going to, you know, keep going. And so it's not so much like you're going to live or you're going to die. But in that older style D&D, I do feel like the way they are portraying it is if he had messed up, it would have killed him.
Yeah.
It was very all or nothing. Either you're going to do it right and you'll make it out, which is why he didn't, you know, break much of a sweat is because he did it right, you know?
Yeah, rolled high enough.
Yeah, but it's just like interesting because that's just not the vibe of what D&D is now, I feel like.
No, I completely agree with that. And maybe it's different with my particular DMing styles, but I'm much more story focused when I'm DMing. Like I'm all for throwing my players into a dungeon and have them do riddles, have them do traps, but I'd much rather them try to do intrigue, like try to go and like discover clues or developing their backstory. And that's something that's very important to me as a DM, just because I feel like that's how you get more buy-in from the players when they actually feel like they're part of the story rather than like a Skyrim player that's just thrown in the middle of things.
I need to level up my one hand.
Yes. Well, and I was also going to say like just concerning just dungeons in general and sort of like what you were saying, Brooklyn, it does feel like they were like, oh yes, this is the most difficult thing that has ever been done. This dungeon has never been figured out. And it's the same idea in Skyrim where it's like behind this door is the God's hand will allow you to build universes. And all you have to do is line the birds up together and the door opens up. Like that's literally all you have to do. And that's the vibe that I was getting. Like this is clearly like a role playing experience that was set up by a DM that was just did not want to even think about it. And to me, it was especially weird that no one was really acting like he just accomplished something that no one had ever done before. They're like,
yeah,
great job. Give it here.
Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, okay, well, see ya.
Cool, you did it? Awesome. I knew you could. And it's like, but last scene you said nobody could. Interesting. Fascinating.
I also love, and again, like, I don't think it was ever said or pointed out that the elf, whose name is apparently Norda, was a paladin.
I'm not surprised. Like, when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, fair. But I also was not like, oh, right. I remember that. No, definitely. Did they say that?
Yeah.
Was it said?
Where was her divine smite?
Well, actually, it was kept in the titty armor. I don't know if that's where.
Oh man, I like that was the costuming choice that I was like, why? Like, why couldn't they just like round it out a little more?
Well,
like,
or even just, I mean, even if that's what you're going for, because there's plenty of like films and stuff that like that's the vibe you're going for. I just feel like it was really poorly made. Also, speaking of random, because you mentioned Marina and her random outfit and look changes and everything. And now I'm doubting myself on if this was the case or not. But yeah, so she had the armor, right? And then she had something dark on bottom. And then at the end, she was just wearing like these super beige tan pants.
It looked like
with
jeans.
The bluish
it was like,
armor.
This is not fantasy vibes. You broke my immersion.
No, it did look like jeans. And also like the armor that was like so metallic and made her like look super high elf, like kind of looks within like, yeah, super casual pants. But you still kept the armor. Like you didn't give her a full outfit change. You just changed half of it. Yeah. And it was distracting. The actress was beautiful, and I didn't think she did a bad job at all, but that was to her detriment, unfortunately.
It was a choice.
I feel like we could have a full-on conversation just about like the odd creative decisions that they have just about titty armor in D&D in general. But I oftentimes feel like these things are mainly for like just almost misogynistic purposes of like trying to emphasize and like, oh yeah, like emphasize the tits there. But it was not even like, it was literally like caution cones right there. It wasn't even like it was emphasizing.
I know,
but
that's
like,
what I'm saying is that it could have been, I could have understood, where they're coming from, but I'm like, it wasn't good.
It wasn't. Yeah.
So it's very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
What's the bigger crime? Them trying to be misogynistic or them making it look bad? Like that's the real.
You did fan service wrong.
I was like, double sad for her though, the actress. I mean, it's like you just got the like bad end of the stick, both sides.
And she did well. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like she wasn't a bad part of the film. Like she didn't get to choose what she wore though.
Yeah. Well, and sort of just backtracking a little bit on what you were saying there, I felt like there were so many, especially when they were in the Thieves Guild or in the bar, there were so many amazing costumes, like the orcs that looked almost like turtle guys. I thought they looked awesome. But then you see the tan jeans essentially, or like in the very beginning when the dragon is about to escape and all the little henchmen, I swear several of them are just in khakis running around like all over the place. I'm like, okay, like don't have 12 orcs that look amazing. Maybe just have 2 of them or 3 and just equally distribute out the budget so people don't look horrible. Yes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie Age of the Dragon. It was actually filmed here in Utah.
Really?
Cool.
Yeah. It's a pretty much Moby Dick, but with dragons instead of a great white whale. And I felt like that had better consistent. And like the budget there was no money in this film. Like they literally shot the movie up Provo Canyon. Like, oh, just no budget for this. And I felt like they had more consistent fantasy themed costumes than this film. And I think, again, like inconsistency, I think is just going to be the overall theme of this movie.
Yeah. While we're on costumes, I have more to say about the costumes. So, like you said, there's budget, and a lot of what they had was pretty intricate and clearly took a lot of effort to make. And so it's a bummer that like they had that amount of energy and budget to create what they did, but it still felt done so poorly. And one of my big things is like, you look at Damodar, for example, very like fancy, ornate, armory looking stuff, but it's like so perfect and shiny, and a lot of the costuming was like so bright colored that it's like, okay, these guys look like they just walked out of the boutique with what they're wearing, like it looks like they haven't like worn it for a day. And so you have this whole film where like wars are happening and people are getting attacked and there's magic and there's like all these things, but it just looks like so pristine that it like was not lived in at all. I'm like, literally throw some dirt on it, beat it up a little, dull down the colors, but have this same costumes, and I think it wouldn't have been nearly as distracting like how bad it was.
Well, to be fair, Damodar was so good at combat that he had never been hit before. So that's why his armor was pristine. Also, his lipstick choice, awesome.
Yes, speaking of general visuals and all of that. And then the ears that were just like cherry red as well.
Well, they were cherry red because the worms.
I understand why, but why did it have to be the primary colors of red and blue?
Hey, he made it to the next movie.
Does he wear the lipstick in the other movie and TV show?
I don't know. That is what Wikipedia told me, so I'll have to look it up and see there. Like one of the worst acting scenes of the movie was in this chapter, and it actually, in my opinion, like again, I'm not trying to rip on the actor of Ridley who is played by Justin Whalen, but when Snails dies, that was like the most like, okay, come on, like you're in a situation right now, you can't be falling to your knees grabbing your hair and then making out with a baddie 15 minutes later.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, they didn't grab like Snails tosses the map, and they didn't show the scene where they grabbed the map, but then they like just have it later. So it's like, okay, well, they grabbed it. But it's like, felt in the moment, I was like, they didn't grab the map, and then they used transporting to like teleport away. And then the next scene was they were like with Norda on horses, and I was like, okay, what happened between Snails dying and them being on horses with Norda? Because like it felt like there should have been maybe it was a deleted scene. Maybe they had this whole dancing in the like punch dancing in the forest scene with Justin Whalen's character.
That's so generous of you. That's so generous of you to even suggest that maybe they just had a deleted scene they just didn't include.
They must have, man.
They must have. They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
I am discovering, as I cover a lot of these more questionable films that people don't necessarily watch, that there is actually quite a bit that's removed. A couple weeks ago, we covered the Disney film Black Cauldron. I don't know if you guys ever watched that one or not. Mm-hmm. But apparently there was a ton of scenes cut out because it was darker than what was already left in the Disney film already. And I'm just like, I want that cut. Like, show me that. I want the nightmares as an adult. Come on.
Yeah. You know, just release the PG-13 version. It's fine.
Yeah. I'll call my mom twice to watch it, you know?
One thing I actually meant to talk about in the first chapter, but I feel like this is just as good of a spot to talk about it, is the whole concept of their society, I think, makes so much sense. And you don't really see it that often, maybe with the exception of Aragon, the inheritance cycle, is where if you have magic, even if you're like just a low-level mage, you are just automatically in a different class, and everybody else who doesn't have magic, you're just in this lower class. And the more I thought about that, that was probably the most accurate and I don't even want to say creative because it's really not that creative, but unique thing that they brought to this film. Like you see, like did you guys read the Aragon series when they came out, or are familiar with the inheritance cycle? Well, it's just fantasy Star Wars. Like, but essentially all the elves have the ability to be like, they're all magic users, and their magic level is just the most average elf has more magic than the best human sorcerer possible. But that's just, everybody has magic. And so the elves just naturally, like, humans are pathetic. They're just disgusting little worms that don't even deserve the air we breathe. Like, just have this air about it. And like, that's what it felt like, where all these mages were like, oh yeah, the commoners, they just go and fish or whatever they do. Like, and that, it just makes sense because especially once you get to later levels with these wizards, sorcerers, warlocks, you are like a minor god at that point.
Yeah.
You're casting the wish spell while the fighter is attacking 3 times in a combat, and it's like, okay, I choose the wish spell.
Yeah. Or like, as a warlock, you're summoning like literal demons to do your will. It's just your soul. Like, you don't need that.
Yeah. I think that brought interest to the film for sure, because I mean, it's an easy concept to grasp onto. Like you said, it's not necessarily like super unique and creative, but something that I think was like a benefit to the film, because it already just created a slightly more interesting relationships between the characters, to have those differences and just to know that, you know, if they're a magic user or if they aren't a magic user, you know. So I definitely think that was probably one of their better choices.
Yeah. And starting the film, they had 2 non-casters or non-mages, I guess, and then one mage joins, and then they have another non-caster who joins, and so they have like a 3-to-1 ratio, and then one of the non-casters dies, and then they pick up another caster, so then it becomes a 50-50, which kind of shows the progression of the movie in the way that, like, the main character, I can never remember, Justin Whalen's character, Ridley, there we go. Ridley, kind of after the death of Snails with the makeout scene, becomes more accustomed to like, okay, well maybe mages should be 50, and then their party shows that. So I choose to see a
symbolism
where maybe they didn't actually plan that.
Hey, here's the thing. Maybe the director, which I said his name, Courtney Solomon, is just so big-brained that they just did not get the vision back in 2000.
Yeah.
Still to this day, they don't get it.
I'll also throw out there while we're on this topic, like obviously magic and then regular like melee combat, those two elements are a huge part of D&D, but it is also interesting, like if you're looking at different worlds, storylines, films, books, if you do choose to have magic, then that does open up a lot of possibilities for what can happen in your storyline, because you think about how many things happened in the movie that was like, okay, and then it was the magic that got them out of that, and it's the magic how, you know, they escaped, and it was the magic that did this. And if it hadn't had that, I mean, yeah, you can still get through the plot and everything, but it's just interesting, like you said, like when you get to like upper level stuff, it's like, yeah, you can hit things harder, better, cool, but the utility aspect of magic really can propel a story.
Yes.
Surge your way out of this.
Sprint really fast.
Or you can hit 10 times as a monk.
Yeah.
Exactly. Make the combat longer.
God, I'm so glad I don't have any monks in my party. I just have 2 druids. That's fun, but
best class, right?
Yeah, when they're both summoning like frogs and wolves the entire time.
Oh yeah, summoner druids are a special breed of, hey, I want 10 snakes on my party, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do 1 initiative roll, and then they're like, well, rules is written, they each get their own, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do 1 initiative roll.
It's like, oh, what's rule number 1? The DM is always right, motherfucker. Now sit your ass down.
1 roll.
No, I mean, I feel bad because like I've just had enough of it. I mean, this is complete tangent. I have a pretty large party. I think we have 6 or 7 people in it right now. And so, I mean, combat already, if we go into a combat situation, that's 2 hours that's going on right there.
Yeah.
And they always try to summon like wolves or bears or something in there, to the point where like, okay, I'm just going to have intelligent villains that know if they target the person who is doing that, they can lose concentration. So I immediately just like, all right, you played it. I'm just going to make you waste that spell then, because you are going to lose concentration, even if I lose this fight, because I hate, I could go on for hours about summoning spells, but
punishment to shape behavior is what that sounds like.
Justice for druids.
Yeah, but I'm like, careful, you know, not too much druid slander.
Yeah.
Kate'll beat you up.
He's right there.
Hey, this might be a shock to you, but Paladin is my go-to. Like, I love
Paladin. Same. Paladins are the best.
Paladin, you can heal, you can hit.
Yeah.
All the things a druid could do, but can you become
Go pick your flowers? Go pick your flowers and turn into a turtle, and then we'll talk. Alrighty, do we want to go ahead and just dive into chapter 3? Because I know we just talked about well, actually, I'll save it. Chapter 3, we ready to do that?
Yes,
absolutely.
Alrighty, chapter 3, the Dragon War and Redemption. Damodar steals the rod and delivers it to Profane. All-out battle erupts, gold versus red dragons, as Savina and Profane clash. Ridley kills Damodar, retrieves the rod, and rejects the corrupting power, destroying it. Savina's gold dragon executes Profane, ending the war. Ridley mourns Snails, placing the eye of the dragon on his grave. The ruby glows, erasing Snail's name. Norda hints Snail is alive, and the gem teleports the group to an unknown realm.
Okay, hold on. We can't get to we need to talk about the end at the very, very end, because I'm going to obsess over that.
Yeah.
So
Brooke was a little more upset than I was about
okay,
the
but wait.
The
other thing, the thing to me though about the whole ending, again, plot armor, I get it, you know, can I really hate on this film for doing this? Probably not, because like this is just always how it goes. But thinking in D&D terms, I'm like, what level is Ridley, you know, when he starts this? And even if we're generous and how much he's able to improve
a level per scene
over the course of the movie, which does not go over very many days. I actually don't really have a sense of how much time passed, but it did not seem like a lot.
No.
Just the way they just came in swinging, and like Damodor's down and Profian's down, and like just things, I mean, that happened so fast, but it just was a little killer. Like I was hoping that they'd be either attacking as a party more, or that they would have more help from really powerful people, because it just ended up being like Ridley just like being the hero and like accomplishing literally what would have been impossible. And he doesn't even have magic.
But it did feel very D&D for it to be like, and now it's his turn, and he's going to do this, and everyone sits and watches. And then the combat continues. Oh, it's your turn. You swing your sword. Oh, you roll and you hit. Great. And now it's his turn, and everyone sits and watches.
Yeah, Kade felt like he could see each turn.
Felt very like stop and go from both the villain side and the hero side.
Oh, you're monologuing? I'll pause for a second, you know?
And I'm like, stab him, dude. Like, sneak up behind him and get him, because he's just talking.
Actually, no, and speaking of that, when Ridley is like, he like jumps into the little teleportation thing, there's a whole long scene where like, you know, Profion and Damodor, they're like
and
talking
all the
and all this
mages
stuff.
of the
and
council.
Kade and I are like, where's Ridley? Where's Ridley?
Yeah.
Where is he? And then all of a sudden, like what feels like 2 full minutes later, the portal opens back up, and then he comes through and is like, I'm here now. And it was like, what was that delay? You were right after him. And I just remember whatever they talked about was not that, it didn't feel that important. So it's just weird.
Ridley must have said Diagon Alley instead of Diagon Alley. And he flew transported a different place and then had to go another time, you know.
Well, I'm going to even go a step further here. Like, whenever you go to the Feywild, you have to roll to see how much time has passed, or like if you could lose your memories. So maybe that's the whole idea there, that they were like, hey, 6 hours passed before Ridley was able to come back there. But I did notice that. Although, Brooklyn, I am a little surprised that you didn't point out the biggest plot hole / thing that I noticed, or thing that I completely disagree with in this movie, is when Norda says you don't turn a gift away. Like there's never turn away a gift. Like when I was like, no, I am an angry DM. I am an evil DM. If there is a gift, you question that gift. You ask yourself, because I will find a way to fuck the party over. But you're like, so when she was like, never question a gift, I'm like, no, question it. Literally,
yes,
question
absolutely.
Because they just got transported to the 9th circle of hell. That's where they live.
Who was it that you said that?
Norda
said it.
Out of all the people, too. Yeah. Like, again, so cryptic, so like not trustworthy, and like, wow. That seems like not even true to her character.
Yeah, like, that was the part that made me I don't want to even say angry, but I was just like, anyone who's played DM knows never to trust a gift. Like, if there's something just given to you, don't trust it. But also, circling back just to the whole idea of him leveling up, I completely agree, but I also do think he got the sword, and that sword was a huge upgrade. And as somebody who mistakenly, I love creating my own magic weapons and giving them to my players. I have realized, though, I sometimes give them god tier weapons that I did not intend to make as god tier. And for example, I have this sword that I initially gave it to a paladin in my group, but the paladin had to drop out. So it got given to the barbarian of the group. And the idea is, for every 10 hit points you lose, you can do a D6 damage extra. So like the whole idea, if you want to really do a lot of damage, just cut your health as low as you can do. And he's like raging at this point, so he's just going berserker mode on it. And I'm like, okay, he just took out a frost giant himself. Congratulations. Here you go. Just like it. So it does make sense that maybe like he was just given this god tier sword.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
That does make me feel better, though, that it wasn't just based off of his ability, but that it was by that kind of external factor that helped him get there.
Yeah.
You know, like that's and yeah, totally a D&D-esque thing. Yeah. So
I wonder what sword it was based off of. From like if it was like, you know, sort of cast style material, or if it was like, you know, like you crit on the, what is it, the Snicker Snack that you crit on a 20 and you're able to cut the head off. That's not Snicker Snack. It's what's the sword from Alice in Wonderland?
Don't ask me. Anyway. I've not seen that in a while.
Anyway, another podcast episode.
Put that in the books now. I did, again, we're jumping all over the place. And this was the conversation I was wanting, like, and this, I have my opinions and ideas, but I have noticed that it seems like with D&D, you either have people that are aggressive with their ideals in real life, or they're on the complete other end of the spectrum there. Like, do you, in your guys' experience for doing this for 6 years and just your interacting with the community and just your personal tie to it, what is it about like these very more progressive minded people that are just drawn to D&D? Like, I especially see it within like the Critical Role community or just these different D&D communities that are out there.
I need clarity. So when you're saying that, are you talking about for like being progressive by I don't even know how to word my question.
Socially, like having like, I feel like a lot of the like people within the D&D community were a lot more friendly and open towards like people like LGBTQ communities or just progressive socially ideas. It just seems like these sort of stories, and again, I get that brought this up because the whole idea is like the Empress is like trying to create equality for everyone, making it so it's, and again, like I know that shouldn't necessarily be a progressive ideal, but especially what it is like that is though sadly in the environment.
No, I totally think that like there's more and more of that, which is interesting because I think that like the political climate, I think, has a really big correlation with how much that gets put into stories. I think when there's a moment of more chill, people feel like they can pull inspiration from lots of different places for their storyline. And I think that the more loud like those voices are, the more they're going to like pull it and incorporate it into their storylines, which is so interesting. Everything ends up getting compared to Star Wars, and we know that like Star Wars has its own kind of political ties to exactly what that means, right? So I find that interesting that that's like a story that to me, it's almost like it was so popular that it's tried and true. It connects with people. It means something to people. Although it's interesting because the more and more generations move along, the less that directly affects people. Anyways, but yeah, I just find that interesting that that's not necessarily seen as a progressive storyline. Well, even like what you're saying, like, oh, well, like basic equality, like we don't really need to call that progressive. It's not really that like unique or out there or anything. But you look at a lot of the media being put out now, both within the D&D community and then just like the broader film community. And I agree, it's totally more progressive. And I think a lot of it has to do with just how much that's the conversation right now. And people are invested in it,
Yeah. As well as I think people find themselves a lot in media, like Dungeons and Dragons, definitely. Because you could play as a goblin, you can play as a fairy, you could all these types of races and classes. And I think that finding like being in a party where there is a gnome and a Goliath and being able to find like a similarity between those two characters feels very almost like progressive in like the way of like, okay, well, if those two people can be like buddies, then like why can't we be buddies?
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because like early D&D, you're looking at more like, this is just war. I want to like,
this
role
is a
play
war
combat.
game. Yeah.
And like, and there's the fantasy elements, but let's be honest, like the combat was at the forefront of that. Even within the storylines, like that is such a big part of it. And nowadays, you have loads of people who play with zero combat, or if they do play with combat, it's a very little part of it. And people are so much more invested in who their character is, what they look like, their personality, how they portray them and role play them. So I also think that is part of that kind of progressive look as well.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking with Colby, one of my professional GM friend of mine, a couple weeks ago, and if you take a D&D story, take all the humor out, take just like what they've accomplished, they sound like a death squad just going around. They're like, okay, yeah, they cleared out this village of goblins easily. They went down and they cleared out these griffins. Like just doing all these. And again, I understand that some people are gravitating to no combat. Personally, I could never do that. I jokingly pride myself in killing my players. I take it as if I ever were to get face tattoos, it'd be D20s as teardrops for each player I've ever killed.
Each TPK is a new D20.
Oh no, that would be you're making it sound like you'd have like too many tears though. It just like clutter your face.
Let me tell you, Post Malone would be envious of the amount of tattoos on my face. But no, it is interesting just because, again, my first real exposure to more like progressive ideals, and because I just was not like I grew up Mormon. I grew up here in Utah, and I mean, shocker for the three of us, but like for those of you that are not aware, Utah is a very red area, and very like if you follow the church or you follow red, like sometimes they're the same. And so like the real exposure I got to like almost progressive ideals was when I started watching Critical Role, and I just started getting involved with watching some of those, going on to forums, going on, looking in the comments. And like I said, there's a lot of people that are very progressive. There's a lot of people that are not in that, which again, like that's a whole nother tangent. I feel like we could dive down going, but
I've lost the plot on where we're at with the Dungeons and Dragons movie, but I'm enjoying this conversation nonetheless.
What Dungeons and Dragons movie?
I don't know.
This is the movie.
Our movie? Are we making a movie? Is that what I'm hearing?
All right, I played Damodar.
We found it.
We found it. We're back. Sorry.
I alluded to it earlier, but this whole dragon war it seemed to appear out of nowhere. Because at first I was like, wait, why are these dragons attacking? Like, did they feel that the scepter got it? Like, but no, apparently the Empress just like unleashed all her dragons on. And also, like, let's be real, this scepter would be beyond god tier weapon in D&D. Just instantly summon 100 golden dragons or 100 red dragons.
After the Empress was like, I just want like peace and equality for my people, and then she's like, but check it out, like I've got 100 of these golden lizards, and also this sweet chainmail outfit that I'm gonna don for the sake of another outfit change to match my cool golden dragon. Quite the change there.
I'm not gonna lie, this is so sad, but like we were talking about the end of the film, and then you're like, oh yeah, and then like all the dragons, and I was like, right, the dragons. Right. Yes. I like literally almost thought of that whole movie and didn't even think of them for a second.
They're, as we'll talk about later down the line, they're easily forgettable, but I did though.
But they're a key part, you know. They're like literally the ending is all centered around basically dragons.
Yeah, they're totally.
And yet
they are important to the storyline.
Almost the background of the battle, because there's the fight with Damodar and the fight with the Emperor Palpatine, but not Emperor Palpatine. What's his name?
Profan, I think.
Profion, yeah. So there's all that going on, and in the background you're just watching like a dragon get impaled by a tower. Also, why did all of the wizards gather in one tower? I was like, spread out. Like this is incorrect battle tactics. You are waiting for a dragon to just absolutely kill this tower.
I mean, as a DM, I love it when my players clump in one area in a dragon fight. That's always what I get excited about.
Yeah, don't they know about cone damage?
They're like, oh, let me grab this. Perfect. All 8 of you. Make a dex save.
Yeah, we're all in a line.
With nothing obscuring your view, perfect.
Yeah, for real.
I can see you guys like never play with Bryce as a DM, right?
No, I love it. It actually
you got to be a little bit hard on your players.
Yeah.
The first time I ever used a dragon in D&D, to tie it back to D&D and dragons, I TPK'd my party. Like the very first time I ever DM'd ever.
Was it with cone damage?
It was with cone damage, but none of the party members could fly. And then I was like, okay, they're a dragon, they're gonna fly in the air. And then everyone was like, cool, I'm just gonna sit on the ground. And I was like, okay, they're gonna hit you again, and I'm really sorry because this is a lot of dice. And then I felt so bad. So if you listen to the Knocked Prone podcast, you'll see that I am maybe a tad bit like on the other side of like,
now he's
I
went
went too
nice.
hard.
Well,
and now I've reeled it back in.
My personal philosophy is like, yes, it shouldn't be like the DM versus the players, but I also want to be pushing my players. I talked about this about a month ago, but I feel like this is a very appropriate time to. Are you guys familiar with Skaven? They're not official D&D. They're pretty much rat people. They're in the Warhammer universe. I love them as like villains just because they're disgusting. They're rats. Like they have a lot of like, they have poison ability. They're pretty much goblins, but cooler in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I had a pack of them ambush my party, and I had specifically set this up as like, okay, this is not overly challenging fight, but at the same time, if you don't do this right, this can fuck you guys up. And because I feel like my party has just been going through the motion, like, oh, fireball and move along. And I nearly TPK'd them with like 6 rats and a little rat ogre. And they were like, okay, actually going through their spells. They're like, will this help? And like going through all their items. And again, I'm not sitting here saying like I relish in just watching them like be terrified, but at the same time, like I want them to actually treat this like an Elden Ring fight. Like I want them to be like, actually, like, this is what's going on here. If he does this, I do that. I want them to have that tactical thought, because one, I want them to be that invested, and two, selfishly, I want to feel that. I want to feel like I'm having that. But, and again, like, I just feel like there's so many DMs out there that are just more concerned, like, well, I'll just let the party slide on this one. But it just makes it boring. Like, people are not invested and they don't respect their players, and they automatically think that they are they get main character syndrome in a game that's meant for main character syndrome.
But that's when you pull out a power word kill when they're just below 100 hit points, and then they're like, really? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You're sorry, as your smile grew even bigger, say.
I've only pulled it out once, and I felt terribly about it afterwards. And then I was like, well, if this isn't the end for your character, we could do like maybe an afterlife arc for them. But like, yeah, they're dead.
Yep.
I need to go get a D20 tattoo real quick. Thank you very much.
And then if they come back to life, I'm going to have to go through months of laser treatment.
That's when you just like get rid of resurrection spells in general.
Oh, you cast Revivify? Well, that's going to be really painful.
Counterspell. Like, who cast Counterspell? I did, as God. I counterspelled that real quick. Is there anything else that we really want to dive into this movie, or anything that you want to highlight about the film before we do our dragon grade?
Now I can just address the ending.
Okay.
I was so confused. And admittedly, I did not go to the internet to try to figure out like what happened. So I actually appreciated your summary that kind of like said what happened.
I gave the explanation, but then she was like, "Is that real?"
Is that though?
And I was
and then
like,
you
I'm
did confirm
sure.
it. But I watched the same thing, and like that's where my mind went too. But I'm like, really? That's the end? Like, well, what? I don't know. I was just surprised, because like it did seem really brutal to have snails die, but I'm also here for that. Like, it at least, it gave the movie some weight, and I'm fine with that. But it just is like, okay, so he didn't come back, because that would have been pretty cheap, I think, at that point. By the time I got to the end of the film, I was like, I hope he doesn't come back. Sounds awful, but you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of wouldn't have been great for the plot.
You need the stakes, yeah.
But then, like, yeah, the stakes were still like kind of messed with. And then I'm like, don't these guys have like families and lives and aspirations? And they're just like, yep, all of us, this party that we just barely met, we're just gonna disappear. And did they know where they were going? Did they know what they were doing? Did they actually get to be with snails? Well, I was just lost.
And the fairy dust, at first I was like, oh, okay, cool. So the orb is glowing. They need to go back to where Snails' body is, because that's probably where they're going to have like some like revivify ceremony or something that was going to end up, I guess it couldn't be revivify at that point, but some ceremony to bring Snails back alive. But then like they all just like pixie dust traveled away, and I was like, excuse me, you're not Tinkerbell over the Disney symbol. Like, you have like, why did you just all poof out of thin air to who knows where? And like you said, it's like an unknown realm. But man, that just, like, as a player, as a DM, I'd be like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want me to just decide where you guys go? You just trust me? Okay, cool.
It really feels like they were expecting to get that sequel. I really think that the writers were just like, oh yeah, once the people see this, they're going to just want so much more.
After they see that dragon get impaled in the first scene, they were like, okay, do we even need to film the rest of the movie? Because, like, print it there.
No, it was the titty armor.
It was the titty armor.
They're like, done deal. Faux show.
$45 million, well spent.
Is that really what the budget was for this?
It was roughly about let me get the exact number here.
No.
Yeah, it was $45 million.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's so much money. They could have
And it
spent
made
so much money on
$33.8 million.
costumes or something. My gosh. They should have had I don't even know, man. That is depressing.
Wow. Crazy.
I don't know if they're really I typically I like to do stuff on just like determining how I would have made this movie better. It's just a different movie.
Yeah, start from scratch, honestly. Even just what we've talked about, I know we've missed like a bunch of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny, like at the beginning I felt like we were being like overall pretty generous, but that's really how I felt, you know? And we're like, oh, you know what? It wasn't the worst movie. Honestly, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, okay, it was pretty bad.
$45 million. I'm like, okay, maybe 9% is a little more reasonable for $45 million. Like the cost to movie goodness.
Right, like you said, it kind of seemed like some like a YouTuber fanfic kind of thing. And if it was that, I could have an appreciation for that.
$4,500. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. Like they did a good job for what they had. But $45 million, it's like the dragons could have been cooler.
The only reasonable explanation is that Jeremy Irons got half. Like that's the only thing that I'm willing to accept there. But I'm sure. No, I mean, again, this might be a shock to you guys. I have watched a lot worse films and will watch a lot worse films.
I believe
as
that.
a dragon movie and television podcast. Yeah. But I really think that this has more to do with just people saw it and they were expecting fireworks and they got spoilers. I think that's
sure. They were expecting the reboot of the Dungeons and Dragons movie and not the 2000s version of the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Because I love the Honor Among Thieves. Great movie. This movie, it was okay.
Yes. Well, and I think that you guys can get behind this, but Austin and I determined that for a fantasy film, there's three categories and two of them need to be met for it to be a good movie. It needs to have good writing, it needs to have good animation, and it needs to have good acting. If it has only two of those, it's a great film. If it only has one, and I feel like almost all of the sections in this particular movie were lacking. Like there were some great acting moments, but with the exception of like two of the actors, only Bruce Payne as Domador and Jeremy Irons, they were the only ones that I felt like consistently were just killing it. Like yes. Marlon Wayans, who played Snails, like he was great, but there were so many moments I was like, ooh, secondhand embarrassment right there.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was like trying to decide, like, okay, was the line just written poorly, or was it like the acting? Because like when you go from one scene and it's like phenomenal, that was great, you did awesome, to the next scene being like, okay, like I just had to question like where was the misstep there, or like did you just need one more take in order to actually like nail that scene? But man, it felt very jarring.
For sure.
It really did feel like this was almost like a one take movie. Like, it felt like that with the CGI. It felt like that with so many of the different aspects. But is there anything else that we want to cover before we dive into our dragon grade?
I'm so ready for the dragon grade.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, without further ado then, each week we do a dragon grade concerning the dragon or a dragonoid that we cover in the film. We grade it on 5 categories between design, special effects, character, film, and X factor. We give each section a score of 0 to 10, with 0 being abysmal, 10 being incredible, and 5 being okay. Now, Kade, on a scale of 0 to 10, what do you give the grade? Because yes, we could technically do a grade for all 300 dragons that we saw, but they all were the same shape. Like I think that we have the gold dragon, we have the red dragon, which this is also we purposely save a lot of our dragon discussion for this section. So please, if you have thoughts specifically on the dragon throughout and where they pop up, you're more than welcome to dive into it. But overall, what are your thoughts on the design of the gold and red dragons?
The design, I would give, I want to say okay, I want to say 2. But here's the thing. I almost want to give it like a 3 because of the lore behind gold and red dragons being the forefront of the film. I guess that's not the design necessarily, but I really love that gold dragons are like the quintessential dragon for the lawful side, like the good dragons, and red dragons are like the quintessential of the evil dragons, or the chromatic dragons. Like, I thought that was cool that they played both to like the coolest of the dragons on either side. But I'm gonna say 2. I'm gonna give it a 2.
Okay, I will put it in at 2. Brooklyn, what do you give it on a scale of 0 to 10?
So for design, I would also say 2, but for different reasons.
Okay.
The actual like shape and design choice of the dragon in a lot of ways is fine, I mean, like the quality of like the CGI is really bad, but I still feel like the design aspect isn't awful. Okay, it is pretty bad, but like, I don't know. There's a reason why I'm not giving it a 1 or a 0.
25 years ago, though. It's like
yes.
You got to give it like a little bit
Yes.
of like asterisk. 25 years.
But I will say, I just feel like the bodies were like pretty skinny, and like the wings, like everything was pretty bony. But then they have like these like big faces, and it makes me feel like they should be like a talking dragon. Like usually when you have like a character dragon, their face needs to be a little human-like and expressive, and it just needs to be big to make space for features. And I feel like it's got this face like it's going to talk at you. And I just feel like most like, more animalistic dragons just have more of like a sleek, narrow, lizard-like or bird-like kind of look. And I don't know, like it's got a really chunky face and a skinny body, and I just feel like that's weird. So that's my reasoning for it too.
No, I was going to save this particular conversation piece for when we were talking about character, but I am just so angry that they didn't give these dragons like the ability to speak or really any level of intelligence. Like, because dragons are, in all the iterations of D&D from what I've seen, they've all had the ability to speak. They're all very intelligent, and they were just fancy horses in this one. They were pawns at this point. Like they really were not these amazing creatures that are just as intelligent and oftentimes more intelligent than humans. And I agree, they had the face as if they were going to talk about it, and they were like bobbleheads. Like they were bobblehead dragons. I am a sucker for just the European style dragon, though. Like, I love the traditional 4 legs. I love the wings there. I felt like the red, like the gold looked more yellow, like banana-ish to me. But the red I felt like actually looked decent. Still not. So I'm going to be a little bit more generous, but not by much. I'm giving it the 3. It's bad, but but it's still that. But going on to the next subject, Kade, on a scale of 0 to 10, what do you give the special effects of the dragon?
Oh man, I want it so bad to be higher, but the blood scene in particular brings it down to a 1 for me. The weird like trickling down of the blood, which led to the fire in the water, which was awesome. But we're not rating the fire in the water; we're rating the dragon, and unfortunately, I'd give it a 1. Yeah.
So I hope I don't copy you every single time, but I would also give it a 1. But again, maybe slightly different reasons. I feel like 1 because could have been worse. Yes, I think it could.
Absolutely.
But I feel like, well, okay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hard pivot. Oh, I don't know.
Pivot, dude.
No,
hard pivot.
Here's the thing I'm struggling with is the era in which the movie was made. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now they could have done better. Even in the year 2000, they could have done better. So it still would not be a good grade. But I do think that there's like, you got to recognize that they had limited capabilities. But when I think of it now, I'm like a super amateur animation person could do this. They could do it, but I also understand like
technology's gone a long ways in 25 years.
I don't know, even just access to knowledge and all the different things. So you know what, I'm going to say 2 because of that. Because of the keeping in mind the era, I will bump it up to a 2.
Nice.
I'm sitting here and I want to be generous, but like, yes, we have to be cognitive of the era, and yes, they have certainly a lot less money than this particular film, but Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl came out, like, I think 3 years later.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, and if you, like, think of it that way, and again,
Yeah.
I know the budget for Pirates of the Caribbean was 140 million versus the
Right.
45 million, but still, like, it looks like decades.
Yes.
That's like the difference between like Oblivion and Skyrim, because they weren't like that far apart in years, but man, like the animation style of Skyrim is like, oh, this is cool. And then you look at Oblivion and it's like, okay, it's not as cool, but it's still good. It's getting a redo, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. I've not been wasting all of my spare time on the reboot on that. All of my no, but that's sort of like where I keep coming back to is like I want to be able to like another thing that gets brought up on this podcast quite regularly is puppeteering is like just such a dying art. They could have gotten away, like even if they did the whole game like Lord of the Rings style, where to make it look bigger, they did the whole like camera focusing and just
Wow.
if
Yeah.
they would have
Yeah.
decided just to do puppets instead, I would have loved that, and it probably would have been cheaper too in some way,
Yeah.
somehow, some way. And they could have done so much more. And so I'm sorry, Brooklyn, I've got to be with Kate on this one. It's a one. It's a one
Fair.
on my.
Fair.
So this is another good section. Character. What do we give the character of the dragons in this film?
I just feel like there isn't any character to these dragons because, like, again, like you said, they're glorified horses, and like the plot of the story is like we got to get this rod so we can control these dragons, but then the dragons end up being kind of secondary to the plot, and it's like, okay, so were the dragons necessary in the first place? Like had he not gotten the eye of the dragon, had he not gotten the scepter, then King Profian would never have gotten it, and then the Empress, Queen Amidala's younger sister, would have not been able to, or would have just had the rod anyway, and it would have carried out as normal, but the bad guys wouldn't have. Okay,
But even all of that is not even like it's the plot around
it's the
dragon,
plot around
but
it.
It's not even the character of the dragon.
Here I'm going straight to zero. I don't think that these dragons have anything, and I apologize if that skews your numbers, Brooke.
No, I was thinking 1 or 0, and my thought on 1 is that there are elements to the dragons that do feel very Dungeons and Dragons-esque, right? Not just like the color and the alignment of the dragons, but also just like, I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways they had a little bit of that traditional feel. Now, I will say I don't know a lot about like old D&D, but I do feel like for a long time now dragons have been respected as something that like as creatures that are intelligent, right? And I think to me character-wise, even if they were just going to be very animalistic and just something that was locked away until the end, they at least could have seemed like intelligent, not in the way of like I understand you as a human, because that's one level of intelligence, but even just like the way they were attacking and the way they were flying and like just showing that they were making any kind of choice instead of seeming completely robotic. I don't think that they maybe did them justice in that way for D&D lore, but they had the couple of small elements of D&D lore that just checked a couple of boxes because they could have butchered that. So I'll say a 1.
I completely respect that. Bear with me. When we covered House of the Dragon, like even they're very similar in the sense of like the dragons in House of the Dragon, they don't speak, they don't communicate, but you get personality from every one. Caraxes is clearly just as chaotic and as insane as Daemon is. Vagar is just old and tired and grumpy, but still just this force of nature. And Syrax is just sort of, Syrax is my least favorite of the dragons, but that's but like the point is like there's ways to even give these dragons personality. Now we're nowhere near around them the same way, but Brooklyn, you said it perfectly. They're almost like robots. Like they're not even animalistic. They're like, all right, the queen bee said go here, let's go here. We gotta go. Like, no, there's no, like I would have preferred them just do a mindless like alpha, like predator that's just going around ravaging like the town side. But no, it's literally like they're drones at that point.
Yeah.
And I can see how they could have done it worse, but at the same time, like even that final Armageddon-esque scene at the end where all the dragons are like flying in, they somehow made that not as exciting. Like if you were to tell me that I was about to watch 100 dragons go and attack like Darth Vader and Voldemort combined into one character, I'd be like, that sounds like the most sick thing in the world. But they made it boring. Like, so I'm sorry again, like Brooklyn, but I've got to go with Kade. There's nothing there for me to really grasp onto there.
It's all right.
It is what it is.
Right.
This poor dragon score is not looking too great for.
I hope this is a show low. I haven't seen all of your episodes. And that would be fun.
The lowest I think is like 3.1, and it was Smurg in The Neverending Story. The evil dragon in the second Neverending Story.
I was gonna say the first Neverending Story, like the gold, or not the Cocker Spaniel eared dragon in the first Neverending Story. I'm like, that doesn't get a 3.1, that gets a 10.
Well, if you watch Neverending Story 3, you'll understand why his score sort of plummeted a little bit. But
right.
But the film overall, I'm actually quite curious to see what are we giving this film overall on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being abysmal and 10 being incredible.
I think there were redeeming elements to the film. I think there were things about it that they did well. And there were acting moments that I was like, wow, like you're giving it everything you have. But it was all the jarring moments of like amazing scene to like, okay, one take maybe. I'm gonna give it a 4.
I don't know why this is so hard for me, but I'm gonna say 3. Yep, kind of based off of the similar thoughts.
And I don't know if a 4 is harsh or generous.
I don't know.
So
when I think of
translates to mediocre, while 3 translates to bad.
And I do confidently feel like
it
it's
rides
bad.
that line between mediocre and bad in my mind.
Yeah, I think, and to be fair, like I said, I feel like we watched it and we were like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But it's like the more I talk about it and the more we tear it apart, it's like, oh yeah, bad. Yep, that's bad. But to be fair, most people aren't tearing apart a film after they watch it to a deep extent. Anyway, I respect it. But yeah, 3 for me.
Well, I'm going to do the cowardly thing here because, like, yes, I'm not going to sit here. Like, I think saying it's mediocre is too generous, but I also agree with you, Kade, saying that there were some really solid points. And again, like, I keep singing his praises, but Jeremy Irons was, like, giving it his all. And I just noticed that I think that's just the type of actor he is. Like, no matter what project he's in, he's trying to win that Oscar for every film he's going into. So I do think saying bad is too harsh. So I'm going to break my own rules and give it a 3.5. So
nice. Like The Addition.
Yes. Like but
you're going to give it a Pathfinder, you mean?
It's full of those.
Yeah.
YouTuber. Okay, this one I'm actually quite curious and could see it going anywhere. This is the X Factor. Now, just a quick reminder for you guys as well as the audience. The X Factor is just anything that you don't feel like qualified in any of these sort of subjects. You could use this opportunity to give it points if you can justify it or take away more points. But really, X Factor is how unique are these dragons?
Yeah, I mean, uniqueness, again, it's like they didn't do any like yeah, I want to like dragons. I want to like, because there was 2 dungeons and there was maybe 300 dragons, or was it 1 dragon? I couldn't tell. So I want to give it the same amount of dragons that were in the movie, which was basically 2, red and gold.
I am going to confidently give this one a 0 because I can't think of any special thing. Like, I really feel like we covered every aspect that these dragons had to offer.
You've swayed me. I go down to 1.
Oh.
See, like, yeah, for X Factor, I'm like, what is it giving? What's special? What's like just intriguing about like these dragons? And I like nothing. Yeah. So 0 equals just nothing.
No, I agree with that completely because there really isn't anything special that, like with a lot of these films that I covered, there's always something at least partially unique. For example, with the movie Q we covered last week, it was based off of Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god. So like there was a level of uniqueness being based off of an Aztec god. In another film, like we mentioned earlier for Age of the Dragons, it was based off of a whale. And this dragon actually did have like very whalish, like the head was well shaped in some ways. So it was unique in that way. But there was really nothing that was unique about these. Like the only thing that was unique was the two different colors, and even then, like copy and paste with all the other ones. Like, it's a 0 for the X Factor. So, which the final score for the Dragons in the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie comes down to 1.56.
Nice.
Wow.
How low can you go? This is golf, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Hey, it's not, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what would be 0 across all the boards. That means it's not abysmal. It's just somewhere between very, very bad and just bad.
It's closer to terrible than it is a bit. Well, no, it's closer to very bad than it is to terrible. It's in that gray area.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so fair, you know? Like
based off
Damodar's in there, you know, he brings it up.
Well, that is the conclusion to our Dungeons and Dragons 2000 coverage. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here. Kade, Brookelin, I'd love for you guys to be able to plug whatever you want to plug right now. Where can they find you? What can they do to support what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so you can find us on all social platforms at Knocked Prone. That is the name of our actual play podcast. So if you are interested in listening to an actual play podcast, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts at Knocked Prone. Or if you are more interested in the people behind Dungeons and Dragons and the shows that have come from it, Brookelin, take it away.
Yeah, so we have a new interview-based show called We're More Than D&D Characters, and Kade produces it, and I'm the host of that show, and we have on guests every single episode, and it's been a ton of fun, super interesting. We've had fantastic feedback for that. And then for our Real Play, that's actually a trilogy series. It's complete. So we hope to go back to Real Play at some point in the future, but right now, that is like a complete thing that is very bingeable. And so, other than that, we also have a Patreon and then all of our social media content, and we also have a website with some merch on it. Knockprone.com. And this is one of those
wearing
things.
One of the shirts.
Nerd Support
Nerds.
I will make sure to get all of that plugged in the description, as well as throwing some graphics on the screen right now.
Awesome.
I also just want to ask, like, how often are you guys posting stuff? Like, I know that you said that you just finished up your trilogy there, but for your We're More Than D&D players, how often are you posting? And when you guys are doing some actual play, like, how often are you doing that?
Yeah, so we're releasing episodes of We're More Than D&D Characters weekly and have been good about that. And actually, I mean, it doesn't matter now that the trilogy series is done, but ever since we started in 2020, Kade has released weekly almost every single week since 2020. So we're pretty consistent with that.
So we've got like 150 Real Play episodes-ish of content that are about an hour a piece, because that is as much as my ADHD brain can handle. And so that's the length of time that you're buying into for the Real Play. But if you are interested in We're More Than D&D Characters, that's also about an hour a piece. And we have about, I think, 6 episodes produced at this point that are, I mean, the 6th episode will release Wednesday.
Awesome. Well, be sure to give them a follow. Kade, Brookelin, thank you so much for coming on. Like, this has been truly a pleasure. I can't wait to have you guys back on to cover hopefully a movie that scores a dragon score better than.
Let's go lower next time.
We're your people.
I'm going to try to find an even lower grade dragon over here. Like,
please.
How deep do I have to dumpster dive to get this to go? But alrighty, guys, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, listen to the wizard, and have a good night.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at BigLizPod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week. Same time, same spot.